welcome back to an episode of the Open Source Cafe. And today we have tech mom Cortney with us. I've known Cortney for a while now, doing a lot of DevRel stuff, conferences, very nice person. And this is a little bit of a different theme for our podcast. We're going to talk about DevRel, but we're going to talk about Courtney's experiences as a tech mom. And hopefully, this will be beneficial to other aspiring tech moms or existing tech people, uh, parents. And yeah, let's get started. I'm single, so I don't have to worry about it for a while.
Yes.
So, I'll maybe I'll see what's coming my way. All right, Courtney. Do you want to give yourself a quick intro?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me. My name is Courtney Nickerson. I have been in tech for about 5 or 6 years now. I've worked in quite a few other industries and then stumbled across tech and just kind of fell in love and thought, oh, this is where I want to be. And at the same time, maybe part of the reason I was like, this is where I want to be is because I just had a son. And the other industries that I was working in, I'd become quite accustomed to traveling around a bit. And suddenly I was going, oh, I don't know if I can travel as much as I used to with a little one at home. So tech kind of bridged that gap for me in terms of being able to work from home, be a bit more flexible. And so, yeah, I currently work for Cube Shop and I am the DevRel for Monocle by Cube Shop. So Monocle helps people and teams achieve high quality Kubernetes configurations through an entire application lifecycle of tools. We do everything from helping you manage your Kubernetes manifest, our open source tool, to helping teams create functional policies and policy enforcement with a cloud tool, and give visibility into what's going on in your cluster for SRE teams. So a little bit of everything. It's a very cool suite of tools. If you have time, you should check it out. And when I'm not doing Monocle, I am momming. So I am also the mother of two. I have a 19-year-old daughter who I met when she was 2.5. And so I chose her. She's the child I chose. And then I have Ethan, who is 4, and he's the child I think I cannot believe I have this child. So one good egg and one other rotten one. And that's life.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing, Courtney. Can you tell us a bit more about when you got involved in tech? Or did you have some other roles before tech?
So I worked in quite a few things before jumping into tech. I've worked in everything from education and language learning to business development, in marketing, communication. So all of those things have been super helpful in my DevRel role. Obviously, being able to bridge the gap between business and being able to communicate concepts that are quite complex to people in a more simple way has been super, super helpful. Those skills coming from other industries. But I actually got involved in tech, my first job, as a business development person right before COVID in a DevSecOps company. So we dedicated ourselves to web application security. And that's really where I got started. And I got started in the sales side of things. And then slowly started to go, I can't really do this job very well if I don't have a little bit more technical understanding. And I was very lucky. It was a startup and everybody was super, super kind and helpful and excited that I wanted to learn more of the tech side. And so everybody would answer all of my questions and then send me resources. And I started to do a little bit of learning on my own and get involved in different communities. And that's kind of how I ended up in the cloud native space and met you, Kunal, was by jumping into the data on Kubernetes community with another non-technically background colleague, Bart, and started writing their newsletter for them and learning things by just being more involved with people in the space, and found that it was super, super welcoming to anyone interested in putting in the time and effort to learn. So that's how I got started in tech, was doing sales, which I had never wanted to do, discovering that I couldn't do that very well without understanding the tech side, and then going, oh wow, I want to be on the tech side. It's so cool.
And what do you think is like, how does one prepare and adapt to like a completely different career trajectory when you're shifting roles? Like, what are any challenges you faced and how you overcome them?
So many challenges. I think the biggest challenge I faced, and that I still face, honestly, is myself. So when I started really taking an interest in the technical side, I kept telling myself I didn't really get it. It was like, oh, this is so complex. I don't think I can really understand this. And I spent loads of time battling back and forth with myself and my own concept of what I would or wouldn't be able to understand or do. And in retrospect, I still do that a lot of times. I'm like, oh, this is, I'm still just getting started in this, and I don't know if I can understand what's going on. So I think my biggest hurdle has been myself, my own imposter syndrome, and getting past that. And then other hurdles really do have to do with balancing a family and being a mom and having a son who's relentless in terms of needing attention and time, and figuring out how to give myself some guidelines and boundaries in terms of, okay, this is the time that I'm going to be working, this is the time I have with my son, and this is the time I'm going to spend in learning other things. And I've really had to go back to being a lot more disciplined with myself and my time in order to be able to progress and make that happen. Because yeah, kids are beyond time consuming and demanding. Even when you're trying not to let them be, they do take over life. So that's probably the biggest challenge, is one, my own imposter syndrome, and getting over that. I'm thinking that I'm old to be a beginner, which is
Inspiring. I have some follow-up questions on, your previous, like how, like your previous roles and now with DevRel. But before we move forward with that, let's talk a little bit about parenthood. So, having a child, can you maybe share what are some of the emotional rewards of parenthood?
the most tender moments of having a child.
Yeah, emotional rewards. Like,
Oh, emotional rewards. Yeah. So the kids are so much work forever. I thought that as my daughter got older, she would be less work, and turns out, I think probably all of us have parents who will tell us that as adults we're still work. And I didn't realize that, but there are these moments where it's just such a struggle to teach them to do anything, and then when they finally do it, you're just so proud. But also it's a weird mix of, I'm so proud you're really capable, but also, why have you been so stubborn? Um, and as weird as that sounds, those moments of the tug and let a little bit loose and pull back and let a little bit loose, to get to help your kids learn, and believe in themselves, because that's also, I think, the other part about parenting that is rewarding is you learn to love yourself and you learn to believe in yourself because you're teaching them to do that. And so the personal growth that comes from parenting, um, is spectacular, and seeing the reflection of that in a little person who loves you so much that all of a sudden you realize, oh, I really should see myself the same way that they see me, um, is probably the most rewarding part of it. The patience is not rewarding. Um,
you can share like if children help in shaping a sense of like, I don't know if this is the right, but like a sense of purpose and like responsibility, like you mentioned.
the sense of responsibility is intense always. And I think all parents, it always gets called mom guilt, but I do believe that all parents have this, including dads. When you're working and you're working in a place that is fast paced and very demanding, you have moments where you think, am I spending enough time? Am I dividing my time appropriately? Am I spending enough time with my kids? Or am I spending too much time at work? Am I being selfish? Am I not being selfish? Those types of things are, and the responsibility that you feel and that weighs on you when you're making those types of decisions or sacrifices um, are are trying at times. And I think parents, it doesn't matter what gender they are, oftentimes emotionally struggle with them in silence. They don't say much about it, but it is constantly going on in the background. And it is because there's that sense of responsibility that's never ending, and that you want to do the right thing for your child, and for your family. And you never really know if you're being too selfish with your own time and ambitions, or not selfish enough, which is the flip side of that, right? It's like, well, but I really want to do this, and I need to be doing this for my family. Obviously, you're also providing for your kids financially and emotionally, and finding the balance between providing financially and emotionally for them as well as yourself is super challenging, um, and a difficult balance to keep for an extended period of time. And more people should talk about it, honestly.
Yeah, and like there are pro kids people and people who don't prefer having kids. So I think it's a free world. So you should live your life how you want. That's fine.
My favorite debate on Twitter, it was not that long ago, and it was actually a DevRel who said, I wish there were childless flights. And
Childless
so
flights.
many people jumped down his throat. Oh, the kids are part of society and you can't just separate them. And other people very much like, well, there are childless restaurants, right? And places where you can go without kids. And I found myself very much being feeling both sides of that argument. It's been a very long day with a very opinionated 4-year-old, and I was looking at him, and I just booked flights to come to the US to visit my family for the summer. And I was looking at him thinking, I mean, could they just have like a place in the back with a babysitter to give you a break for a while? Because, yeah, the pro kid, no kid debate is one of those things that when you have them, you can't imagine your life without them. But also, oftentimes, you imagine a short period of time alone, and you don't always get that. But
So what do you think are like some of the thoughts or maybe misconceptions about parenthood that deter people from having kids?
I think one of the big ones is when you don't have kids and you're watching other people do parenthood, you think, oh, I would never do that. So many people that I know that are like, I would never give my kid that much screen time, for example. And then they're in the thick of it, and the first thing they're looking for is a screen, right? The same thing with food. I would never give my kid that many sweets, and next thing you know, um, you're like, here, just have the piece of chocolate and calm down. So I think the biggest misconception is that you don't really know what you'll do until you're doing it. um, and it is a constant situation of picking and choosing your battles, right? And so much of that is based on how the circumstances are that battle is about to happen in, how much energy or patience you have, and what the end result is that you think you're actually going to get or not. And I think until you are in the thick of it with one child or more, you don't realize how many things that you had no idea how you would or wouldn't react until you have to react to it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Courtney. And speaking of work, there may be any successful like how successful parents manage the delicate balance between work and family and personal life.
I think the most successful people doing this are the ones that realize that for them to be happy, they need to have their own goals that aren't centered around their kids. And that oftentimes it truly is quality over quantity of time with your child. And also those that have a support community. So a support community can look anything like somebody who's willing to help with childcare needs, whether it's a spouse, partner, or just somebody who lives nearby, or simply an emotional support community of people who are like, yeah, I see you and I know you're doing the best you can and you'll figure it out. I think that sense of community and people understanding that your kids really are your priority, whether you're working or not, they're always there running in the bed. It's like the app on your phone that consumes your battery. It's always running in the background. Your kids might not be right in front of you and with you, but they are constantly consuming space and energy in your mind and the decisions that you make and what you choose to do. And being in an atmosphere at work, especially, where people understand that and are aware, it doesn't change the things that you need to get done or always the timeline of when you need to get them done, but the fact that they're aware that you have that extra energy that's being spent on somebody else is an insane amount of support that just having somebody recognize it and see it is super helpful, and letting you take a deep breath and find your balance. It almost gives you permission to do so.
Nice. And speaking of work, you work in DevRel. So the little question I have is how does the skill set of developer relations relate with parenting? So um, do you think there are any like communication techniques that are used in DevRel which can be applied to parenting?
Yes. I do use some very basic communication techniques in DevRel and with my kids. One of them is very much the concept of tutorials and the step-by-step. So you can't just tell a developer, you're going to click in these two places and then you're done. And then it does this for you. You really do have to be like on the right-hand side. You're going to scroll and you're going to click on this and you have to say exactly what that button is, because it's more helpful to them, right? And they know exactly what to expect when they get done with it. And kids need the same thing. They need very much the step by step. This is what you need to do, and this is what you can expect from it, from doing those actions. They're far more productive and get more done when you take the time to explain and put it in a context that they understand. And it's very much the same thing with developers. If you take the time to figure out what context is going to resonate with them and walk them through it step by step, then their reactions and the productivity that they get from the content and the things you create is drastically different. Because turns out kids are just human beings. They're just smaller in size. And I think we all need to recognize we're all kids that just need to be watched through step by step and encouraged once in a while, right?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. One more key skill set is in DevRel is empathy. So maybe you can now share how empathy plays a role in like parenting and both parenting and DevRel.
Yeah, empathy is, I think it's a combination of empathy and compassion. So you can empathize with somebody, but not always truly gain a full understanding of their situation, or have compassion with them. And with kids and with DevRel, a lot of it is, okay, I see you and I understand what it is you want to do or what your problem in terms of what issue you're seeing that you need to solve. I see it, I understand it, but do I really feel the same pain as you do? And a lot of it is jumping in with people, and trying to truly walk next to them as they go through things and then understand, oh, this is why this is an issue for you. With my son, it's like, oh, this is why you're crying all the time, because you feel like you're not being heard and understood. With developers, a lot of times, like, oh, this is an issue because in your current workflow, right? Not every company works the same. And so this is an issue for you here. Maybe it wasn't before. And a lot of times it's actively listening, both to kids and developers. It is actively listening, not trying to find a response, right? Just sitting and actively listening to what they're saying and how they're explaining it, to then try to help them sometimes identify what the actual problem is. Because a lot of times when people tell you what's bothering them or what the problem is or the issue that they're having or the complex situation that they have at work, they're talking about a whole bunch of symptoms, and they themselves haven't always been able to put their finger on exactly what it is that's causing all of that. And actively listening to people helps you sort through what the symptoms are and figure out what the actual problem is. And with kids and teenagers, oh my gosh, so often it's very much the same way. It's a matter of listening to all of the different emotional things that are going on and all of the symptoms of their problem, and actively listening to then help identify what the root cause actually is. So I think that skill set is so useful, in dealing with family, in dealing with friends, colleagues, and oftentimes with ourselves. I think a lot of times actively listening to ourselves and having empathy with ourselves, especially in the tech space, where things change so quickly and it's hard to keep up, is probably one of the most underrated skill sets that an individual can have. You can learn tech, you can learn communication, but empathy is something that you practice actively by doing on a daily basis, and
Yeah.
more people
Yeah. No,
help understand that.
couldn't agree more. Thanks for sharing, Courtney. I've just a few questions around DevRel before we wrap up. So you mentioned you have you have some previous experiences before being a DevRel. Can you maybe share how having a cross-industry experience enhance a career in developer relations?
Yeah, so DevRel is, as you know, um, one of those spaces that everybody's like, oh yeah, they're DevRel. What do they even do? And a lot of times we get sent so many different things to do, that keeping track of priorities and figuring out what needs to be done first and how to do it most efficiently can be very difficult. And then measuring our success is so important. But being able to measure so many actions that we do is really difficult. A lot of them don't have solid ways to measure in order to decide whether they were successful or not. And so coming from other aspects of business and other industries and understanding more business objectives, so truly the business side of things, and how people are measuring in terms of money and what the annual goal is and the fiscal goal of things and budgets, makes that aspect of DevRel and connecting when there are questions around, well, what are you doing and how is that moving the needle or not, a lot easier to handle and manage, because you can bridge the gap between the business objective and the DevRel role on a personal side in terms of what your actual work is. On the other side of things, I think so often, as tools are being built and you're there talking to your ideal end user, having experience in marketing or sales makes a massive difference in terms of being able to go back to your team and give them information that's going to actually be useful for them. So one thing is to go back to a product team and say, okay, we're missing this feature set and this is why, or the UX experience isn't up to par and this is why. Those are very technical sides of things. A totally different thing is understanding that it doesn't matter how good of a job you do as a DevRel and how fantastic your tool is on a technical side. If people don't find it and understand it, then it's not going to progress and go anywhere. And the marketing and communication side of tech is so important, especially when you look at the vast landscape of tools in the CNCF. If people can't communicate about them appropriately and get them out there so that they're quickly understood, they won't go anywhere. They'll just stay in that landscape, not actually progress. And so having experience in those things makes it much easier to bridge gap also with your communication and marketing team to be able to say, okay, right now what you're putting out into the world, people are understanding this other concept. You're not really pinpointing what it is that we do, or you're not explaining it well. And here, let me help you put it into terms that are still creative and marketing and fun, because as we all know, marketing communication people can be quite picky about being able to be creative with things. So being able to say, okay, here's some terminology we can work with to make it creative and fun and eye-catching, but also truly
Yeah.
says what it is that we do and who we are.
You can also hear a kid in the background.
Yeah, kids in the background.
Right. Thanks for sharing, Courtney. Those are the questions we had. It's really great talking to you. So one last question. Can you maybe share any fast and easy recipes for folks who want to eat real food but don't know how to cook?
Yeah, so rice, kunal, we were just having the rice conversation. 1 water glass of rice, and then add 2 1/2 water glasses of water.
I had rice today and it was all mushy, so I added too much water.
There's that. My husband is also a terrible cook, so he does microwavable rice, little packets that you can just put in the microwave. I always call him Chef Mike for microwave. But chicken, you can do just about anything. Chicken breasts, cut them up into pieces, add different types of sauces. You can rotate between adding pasta or adding couscous or adding vegetables. Put them over salad greens, and at least you've got a little bit of nutrition in there.
Great. Thanks for
Go-tos.
really great talking to you. And for everyone else, if you want to check out, please watch all the links that will be on in the description below. And see you in the next one.
Thanks so much.